The day had started just like any other, gray, uneventful, and weighed down by the crushing anticipation of an important interview. Alex had dreamed of this day for months. His heart raced as he prepared for the opportunity that could change everything, his chance to escape his modest life and make a real difference. But fate, as it often does, had different plans. As he walked briskly through the busy city streets, his eyes fixed on the clock, Alex barely noticed the woman ahead of him struggling with a heavy bag, her face contorted with the effort. Her clothes were simple, nothing extravagant, but there was a certain grace in the way she moved. Something about her made Alex pause. In a split second, the world around him seemed to fade away. The rush of the interview, the fear of failure, the pressure of his circumstances, it all blurred into the background. He couldn't help it. His instincts took over. "Let me help you with that," Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper, yet full of sincerity. He could feel the weight of her bags, both physical and emotional, as if he were carrying a piece of her burden. The woman's tired eyes met his, a flash of gratitude and surprise flickering across her face. "Thank you," she said softly. But Alex barely heard her. His mind was already racing ahead, calculating the time he was losing. His chance at the interview was slipping away. "I'll be fine," she insisted, as he helped her steady the bags. "You look like you're in a rush." He glanced at his watch. The interview was about to start, and there was no way he would make it now. His heart sank, but he couldn't bring himself to just walk away. "I'm running late," Alex admitted, guilt weighing heavily on him. "I really wanted this job." She nodded, offering him a warm, reassuring smile. "Sometimes the things we think are important aren't always the ones that change our lives," she said quietly. "Kindness has a way of leading us where we need to go." Alex nodded, not quite understanding her words, but grateful for the brief connection. He handed her the bags, watched her disappear into the crowd, and turned to make his way to the interview, though he knew it was already too late. Hours later, as he sat in his tiny apartment, staring at the empty space where his hope for a better future had just slipped away, his phone buzzed with a notification. He reached for it with a sigh, expecting nothing more than an email from another rejection or a message from his mom checking in. But this time, it was different. The message was simple, yet its words shook him to his core. "I need to see you. I'm the CEO of Riverstone Industries. Meet me at my office. Chloe." Alex froze. His breath caught in his throat. The woman he had helped, the woman, was the CEO of one of the most powerful companies in the city. The realization hit him like a wave. How could this be? Why would she want to meet him? The seconds stretched on, his pulse racing. This was impossible. The clock on his phone flicked to 3 p.m., the same time his interview had been scheduled. It was then that it hit him. The interview he had missed, the decision to help her despite the cost. It wasn't just a random moment. It had been the turning point, the spark that would ignite a fire of change in his life. But was he ready for it? Was he ready for the kind of transformation that could come from the most unlikely of meetings? Alex's life had never been easy. His father had walked out before he was even old enough to remember his face, and his mother, though strong, had to bear the weight of everything alone. They lived in a small, cramped apartment on the outskirts of the city. Money was always tight, and the walls seemed to close in with each passing day. Yet, despite the constant struggle, Alex never lost his capacity to care for others. He was always the first to lend a hand, the first to listen, even when it felt like no one was listening to him. From the time he was a child, Alex had been taught that kindness was a virtue, no matter what. His mother would often say, "The world may not always repay kindness, but you will know the difference you've made in someone else's life." It was a lesson Alex carried with him through the years, a constant in the sea of uncertainty that surrounded him. But it wasn't just his mother's teachings that shaped Alex. It was his own natural inclination to help others, even when it cost him something. Whether it was giving his last few dollars to a homeless man or helping a classmate who had been bullied, Alex never hesitated. At school, he was the quiet kid, sometimes invisible to others. But if anyone needed help, Alex was there. The kids who made fun of him, the teachers who overlooked him, he didn't let any of that affect the kindness in his heart. He had never felt resentment, not even when life seemed to pull him further and further away from his dreams. His innocence, his ability to see the world with an open heart, made him both naive and beautiful at the same time. When Alex saw the woman on the street struggling with the heavy bags, something inside him stirred. He didn't know her. She was just another stranger in the city, another face in the crowd. But her tired eyes, the way she seemed so weighed down by the world, mirrored his own struggles. She was carrying more than just bags. She was carrying burdens that Alex understood all too well. Despite the anxiety building up inside him about missing his interview, he didn't think twice. He stepped forward, his heart calling out to her, and offered his help. His decision wasn't guided by any thought of reward, nor was it influenced by any expectation. It was pure. It was innocent. He saw a person in need, and he acted without hesitation. That's what Alex did. He helped because that's just who he was. The act itself wasn't extraordinary. It wasn't grand. He didn't make a speech or ask for anything in return. He simply carried her burden for a moment. But in that moment, something deeper was happening. His innocence was revealing itself, as though it was the very thing that would eventually guide him out of the darkness, of his ordinary life into something far more extraordinary. And she noticed. Chloe noticed the purity in his actions, the lack of any ulterior motive. In a world where people often sought to climb over one another, Alex's unspoken humility and selflessness were rare. "I'll be fine," she had said when he insisted on helping, trying to ease his guilt. But kindness is a rare thing these days, and when it's given freely, it always finds its way back. At that moment, Alex didn't understand the weight of her words. All he knew was that he had done something right. And in that moment of shared humanity, a connection was forged. Not just between two people, but between the innocence of Alex's heart and the powerful, transformative journey that lay ahead. What Alex didn't realize was that this moment, this tiny, selfless gesture, was the catalyst for something that would change his entire life. Chloe, the woman he had helped, was the CEO of one of the most successful companies in the city. She had been watching people for years, studying them, understanding their motivations. She could see through the facades. But Alex was different. He didn't have a facade. In his heart, there was no greed, no hidden agendas, no desire for fame. There was only raw, untainted kindness. She knew then that Alex was special. In his innocence, he had shown her a glimpse of a world that wasn't, tainted by power, competition, or money. It had been days since Alex received Chloe's unexpected message. His mind couldn't stop racing. The offer was beyond anything he had ever dreamed of. The CEO of Riverstone Industries, one of the largest corporations in the city, wanted to meet him. What could she possibly see in a kid like him? A boy who barely had a high school education, a boy whose clothes were worn and shoes scuffed from too many miles of walking through the streets he called home. What could he possibly have that someone like Chloe would want? Yet deep inside, something stirred, a glimmer of hope, mingled with confusion and disbelief. He had been raised to believe in the power of kindness, but the world he lived in often rewarded the opposite: ambition, ruthlessness, self-interest. To survive, Alex had always told himself, you had to fight for every scrap. Life didn't care about your kindness, about your heart. It cared about results. But now, as he sat in Chloe's lavish office, staring at her with a mix of awe and nervousness, he realized that the world he had always known, his narrow, harsh version of reality, was about to shift. Chloe had greeted him with a warm smile, but her eyes held something deeper, a quiet intensity. "Alex," she said, her voice calm yet authoritative. "I've been watching you." "Watching me?" he asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. She nodded. "What you did for me that day wasn't just an act of kindness. It was an act of courage. You gave without expecting anything in return. You showed me something rare. Pure empathy. And that's something I can't ignore." For the first time in his life, Alex realized something that struck him to his core. What he had always believed to be a weakness, the constant urge to help others, even at the expense of his own needs, was actually his greatest strength. All these years, he had thought that the world valued power, wealth, and status. He thought that to succeed, he had to abandon his heart, his sense of compassion, to climb the ladder. But Chloe had just confirmed something that had been stirring inside him, something he hadn't even been able to put into words. True strength comes from the heart. Her words hit harder than he expected. For the first time, Alex began to understand that success wasn't just about what you could achieve. Over the next few weeks, Chloe became a mentor, guiding Alex through the complex world of Riverstone Industries. She introduced him to key players, taught him the ropes of the business, and helped him navigate a world that was as foreign to him as the stars were to someone living on the ground. But more than that, Chloe pushed him to explore his values, to examine why he did what he did. "Alex, you can't change the world by being passive," she told him one day, sitting across from him in the company's sleek boardroom. "You have to act with intention, but acting with intention doesn't mean abandoning your heart. You need to align your actions with your values." That's when the moral awakening truly took root in Alex's soul. The weight of his choices began to make sense. He had always given his all without expecting a reward. But now he understood that this wasn't just about helping others. It was about giving to himself, to his own growth, to his own journey. He had always been afraid of his own potential. He had always believed that his worth was tied to how others saw him, to how much money he made, to how successful he could become in the eyes of the world. But Chloe had shown him that his true worth had nothing to do with external validation. It had everything to do with the purity of his heart, the integrity of his actions, and the courage to stay true to himself in a world that constantly tried to strip that away. As Alex grew within the company, he began to realize that every challenge was an opportunity to test his values. It wasn't just about doing business. It was about creating something that would positively impact the lives of others. The more he learned, the more he understood that business wasn't just about making money. It was about creating a legacy, building something sustainable, something meaningful. He had the ability to make a real difference, but only if he stayed grounded in the very values that had defined him since childhood: kindness, empathy, and integrity. It wasn't easy. The business world was cutthroat, and Chloe's high expectations weighed on him. But Alex had something many of the seasoned professionals didn't have. He had a heart that was still pure, a heart that saw the world not for what it was, but for what it could be. And it was this heart that became his greatest asset, guiding him through the challenges, through the inevitable conflicts and obstacles that arose along the way. Through his interactions with Chloe and others in the company, Alex discovered that success didn't mean compromising your soul. He could build an empire, but it didn't have to come at the cost of his integrity. Slowly but surely, he began to build his own path, one where his moral compass would guide him to make decisions that would not only enrich his life, but the lives of others. It was late in the evening when Alex received the call. His heart raced as he saw Chloe's name flashing across his screen. He had been with the company for several months now, and he had learned more than he ever imagined he could in such a short time. The world of business had opened up to him, full of opportunity and challenges alike. But today was different. "Alex, I need you to come to my office immediately." Chloe's voice was firm, but there was an underlying urgency that immediately set off alarm bells in Alex's chest. He didn't hesitate. His mind raced through possibilities, trying to piece together what could be so urgent. He quickly grabbed his jacket, his hands shaking slightly as he prepared himself for whatever might lie ahead. As he made his way through the sleek hallways of Riverstone Industries, his mind kept replaying moments of his journey, his first encounter with Chloe, the lessons she had taught him, the growth he had undergone. But this call, it felt different. When he arrived at Chloe's office, the atmosphere was charged with tension. She was standing by the large glass window, her back to him. The city lights outside cast a soft glow, but inside the room there was a heaviness that Alex could feel in his bones. Chloe turned to face him, her expression unreadable. For the first time since he'd known her, she looked unsure. "Alex, I need you to make a decision, one that will change everything." Alex stood frozen. "What's going on? What decision?" Chloe took a deep breath as if gathering her thoughts. "There's a huge contract on the table. Riverstone's been offered an exclusive deal with a major competitor. It's a game changer, but—" She paused, her gaze piercing through him. "To secure it, we need to make a sacrifice. We need to buy out smaller companies that are struggling. It's a cold, strategic move. But the problem is, these companies, these people, are just like you and me. They have families. They have lives." Alex's chest tightened. He could feel the weight of her words. But there was something else gnawing at him, something deeper. "So you want me to approve a deal that will put people out of business?" Chloe didn't flinch. "It's not personal, Alex. It's business. We can't afford to show weakness in front of our competitors. If we let them win, we lose everything we've worked for." Alex's heart pounded in his chest as he absorbed her words. This was the very thing he had always feared about the world of business, cold, heartless decisions that stripped people of their dignity, their livelihood. He had spent so many years fighting to hold on to his own humanity, his kindness, but now he was being asked to compromise that very essence for the sake of success. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. His thoughts collided in a chaotic swirl of doubt, fear, and anger. He could see the faces of the people who had worked their entire lives to build their companies, their families depending on them. He could feel their pain, their uncertainty. And yet here he was, at the precipice of something that could change his life forever. Could he betray his values for the sake of his career? Chloe's gaze softened as she stepped closer. "I'm not asking you to sacrifice everything, Alex, just this one thing. It's how the world works. It's the price of success." But Alex wasn't listening anymore. All he could hear were the echoes of the lessons he had learned throughout his life, the kindness his mother had instilled in him, the compassion he had shown others, the promise he had made to himself that he would never let the world harden him. He looked at Chloe, his eyes filled with a mixture of pain and determination. "I can't do it. I won't." For a moment, Chloe's eyes widened as if she hadn't expected this response. But then, something in her expression shifted. Respect, maybe even admiration. "I understand," she said softly. "I've always known you were different." Alex took a step back, his heart beating fast, but he knew in that moment that he had made the right choice. The pain of turning away from the deal was almost too much to bear, but the relief that washed over him, knowing he had stayed true to himself, was even more powerful. In the days that followed, the ripple effects of his decision began to show. He was removed from the project, his position within the company threatened, but deep inside, Alex felt stronger than ever. The moral compass that had guided him from the beginning was still intact. He had chosen what was right over what was easy. Then, as the tension grew, the real turning point came. Chloe, who had always been a source of strength for him, approached him again. This time, it wasn't about business. It wasn't about deals or contracts. It was personal. "I know what you did," Chloe said quietly one evening, "and I want you to know that I respect your decision. You didn't just choose what was right for you. You chose what was right for everyone." In that moment, Alex realized that the world had been testing him, pushing him to give up his principles for the sake of success. But by refusing to do so, he had earned something far more valuable, his integrity, and a true understanding of what it meant to succeed. Alex had always been the kind of person who avoided the spotlight. His actions spoke louder than words, and his heart was always in the right place, even if no one ever truly noticed. This was the essence of his character. He didn't seek recognition, nor did he expect gratitude. His values were deeply rooted in kindness, empathy, and humility. One cold morning, just days after his heart-wrenching decision to refuse the business deal that would have secured his future, Alex found himself walking through the busy streets of downtown. The sky was overcast, the kind of weather that mirrored the storm raging within him. He had no idea how he was going to make ends meet, or if he would even have a place in Riverstone anymore. Chloe swallowed hard, her emotions swirling. She had been so close to giving up, but Alex's presence gave her a new sense of hope. She felt a flicker of determination stir within her, but it wasn't enough to quiet the doubts still echoing in her mind. "What if we fail?" she asked softly. Alex didn't hesitate. "Then we fail together. But I promise you, we won't go down without a fight." The raw honesty in his words pierced through her. It wasn't just about business anymore. It was about something deeper. Alex wasn't just offering her a way out. He was offering her a partnership, a commitment to go through the darkest times side by side, to fight for the company and for each other. His protective nature wasn't just about saving the business. It was about protecting her, even when she didn't believe in herself. Chloe felt the weight in her chest lift just a little. She had seen Alex as a quiet, introspective person, a man who preferred to stay in the background, never seeking the spotlight. But in that moment, she saw him as something much more. He was the anchor she needed, the person who would keep her grounded when everything else was falling apart. "I'm in," Chloe said, her voice stronger now. "Let's do this." Alex gave her a small nod, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. The bond between them was stronger than it had ever been. The stakes were high, and the road ahead was uncertain, but Alex knew that as long as they were united, they stood a chance. The next few weeks were a blur of late nights, strategy meetings, and countless phone calls. Alex and Chloe worked tirelessly, pushing themselves and each other to the limits. There were moments of doubt, moments when they both questioned if they were doing the right thing, but Alex's unwavering determination never wavered. He had made a promise to Chloe, and he would keep it. Despite the obstacles they faced, Alex's protective nature continued to shine through. He made sure that Chloe was never alone in her decision-making, always offering guidance and support. He shielded her from the criticism of the board and the press, taking the brunt of the blame when necessary, so that she could focus on saving the company. His selflessness and loyalty were the foundation of their partnership, and it fueled Chloe's resolve to fight back. There were times when Alex felt like giving up. The road was long and the pressure was immense, but every time he looked at Chloe, he remembered why he was fighting: to protect her, to give her a future she could believe in, and to prove that sometimes the most important battles are fought with heart and integrity. In the end, they did it. Together, they turned Riverstone around, not by making ruthless decisions, but by staying true to their values. The company emerged stronger, and so did their relationship. Alex's protective nature, combined with his unwavering determination, had been the driving force behind their success. The weight of regret sat heavily on Alex's chest as he sat alone in his apartment, the silence suffocating him. He couldn't stop replaying the events that had led them to this point. The mistakes he had made, the opportunities he had missed, and the moments he wished he could go back and change. Every decision, every misstep seemed to have led him here, to this breaking point where everything was on the line. He could still hear Chloe's voice, filled with disappointment, accusing him of not doing enough, of letting her down when she needed him the most. Her words stung, but they were the truth. He had failed her in so many ways. He had been so caught up in his own doubts and fears that he hadn't been able to see how much she was struggling. The one person who had always believed in him, who had trusted him with her company, her vision, and he had let her down. And now, as Riverstone teetered on the brink of collapse, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had failed not only Chloe, but himself too. Alex had spent so many years running away from his past, burying his mistakes under layers of excuses and justifications. But now they were staring him in the face. The guilt weighed him down, making it hard to breathe, hard to think. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. He wasn't the person he had hoped to become. He had always wanted to prove that he was capable, that he could be successful, that he could make a difference. But in his pursuit of success, he had lost sight of what truly mattered: integrity, loyalty, and the people who depended on him. The turning point for Alex came one rainy evening when he stood at the edge of the city, staring out at the skyline. It had been a long day filled with meetings and phone calls, but all the noise in his life had faded into the background. In that moment, standing alone, the full weight of his regrets hit him like a wave. He remembered the first time he met Chloe. The way her eyes had lit up with determination. The way she had inspired him to chase after his dreams. She had been everything he had ever wanted to be. Strong, confident, driven. And now, here he was, the one who had let her down. He had let his fears and insecurities get in the way of their relationship and the success of Riverstone. But in that moment, he realized something else. He still had a chance. He wasn't too far gone. He could still make things right for himself and for Chloe. Alex knew that redemption wasn't going to come easily. It wasn't going to be some grand gesture or some quick fix. It would be a journey, but it had to start somewhere. And it started with him accepting responsibility for his actions, facing the truth of his mistakes, and making a commitment to change. He didn't want to be the man he had been. He wanted to be someone better, someone worthy of Chloe's trust. With renewed purpose, Alex made a promise to himself. He would do whatever it took to help Chloe and Riverstone, to prove that he was capable of redemption. Alex's journey toward redemption wasn't just about words, it was about action. He knew that in order to earn Chloe's forgiveness and prove to himself that he had changed, he had to demonstrate his commitment, not just through promises, but through tangible results. The first step was admitting his mistakes. Alex went to Chloe not with excuses or justifications, but with an open heart and the full weight of his remorse. He sat across from her, his hands trembling slightly, but his gaze steady. "I messed up," Alex began, his voice filled with sincerity. "I failed you, and I failed Riverstone. I can't change the past, but I can change the future. I'm here to make things right, no matter what it takes. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to prove that I can be better." Chloe's expression was guarded, her eyes flickering with uncertainty. She had every right to be angry, to be wary of him. After everything, she had every reason to doubt his intentions. But in Alex's eyes, she saw something she hadn't seen in him before: true accountability. There were no excuses, no hidden motives, just the raw, vulnerable truth of a man who was determined to make amends. Over the next few weeks, Alex threw himself into the work with a level of dedication and focus that he had never shown before. He took on the tasks that no one else wanted to handle, working tirelessly to repair the damage he had caused. He pored over spreadsheets, stayed late, into the night on conference calls, and did whatever it took to rebuild Riverstone's reputation. But more importantly, he did it with honesty and integrity. Every decision he made was guided by the values he had once lost sight of. Chloe watched from the sidelines, her skepticism slowly beginning to fade. It wasn't easy for her to trust him again, but as she saw the changes in Alex, the way he took responsibility, the way he fought for their company without hesitation, she began to see a different side of him. This wasn't the man who had once been selfish and uncertain. This was someone who had learned the hard way, who had grown from his mistakes, and who was willing to put in the work to earn her respect. The true test of Alex's redemption came when Riverstone faced its biggest crisis yet. A major investor was threatening to pull out, which could have spelled disaster for the company. The board was in disarray, and Chloe was on the verge of losing hope. But this time, Alex didn't waver. He knew what needed to be done, and he was ready to fight for the company that had once seemed like an impossible dream. With the stakes higher than ever, Alex took charge, devising a plan to secure the investors' commitment. It was a risky move, but it was the only option they had left. He put everything on the line, knowing that if he failed, there would be no coming back. But he wasn't afraid anymore. His redemption wasn't just about saving Riverstone. It was about proving to Chloe that he had become someone worthy of her trust. In the final meeting with the investor, Alex's calm confidence was unshakable. He knew the value of Riverstone, not just in terms of money, but in terms of the people it represented. The employees who had dedicated their lives to the company, and Chloe, who had built it from the ground up. He didn't just pitch the company, he pitched the vision, the heart. And in that moment, as the investor signed the contract, agreeing to stay with Riverstone, Alex realized that he had done it. He had redeemed himself, not just in Chloe's eyes, but in his own. He had faced his past, owned his mistakes, and fought for a future that was worth believing in. Chloe looked at him, her expression softening. "You did it," she whispered, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "You really did." Alex smiled back, a sense of peace settling over him. He had found redemption, but more than that, he had found a purpose greater than himself, a purpose he would never lose sight of again. It was a cold morning, and Riverstone's future hung by a thread. Chloe had received an email late last night, a 8-hour final warning from their largest investor. The terms had shifted, the stakes had been raised, and it seemed like there was no way out. Their company was on the brink of collapse, and with it, all their dreams of success, growth, and a better future would vanish. It wasn't just a business at risk. It was the legacy Chloe had built with her own hands. Alex stood in front of her, the weight of the situation pressing on him more than it had ever before. He could feel the tension in the room, the silence, hanging thick like a storm cloud. Chloe's normally confident and composed demeanor had given way to visible signs of strain. She had trusted him, believed in his potential. But now, with everything on the line, the harsh reality set in. He had made too many mistakes, and no matter how hard he worked, it felt like the world was always pushing him back into the dark. "I don't know what to do, Alex," Chloe whispered, her voice almost breaking. "This is bigger than both of us." Her words felt like a knife piercing through his chest. He could feel the sweat on his palms, his heart pounding like a drum. In that moment, Alex was engulfed by a deep, suffocating fear. The fear that he had failed, that he had let her down, and that this would be the final straw. The pressure was unbearable. He could see the company unraveling before his eyes, and worse, he could see Chloe's dreams crumbling. His deepest fear was that he had no way to save them now. As the minutes ticked by, every possibility seemed to lead to the same devastating conclusion. Riverstone was too far gone. The investor would pull out, the board would collapse, and Chloe, she would lose everything she had worked so hard for. But then, something unexpected happened. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It wasn't a sudden stroke of luck. It was a subtle shift, a quiet moment of clarity that Alex would never forget. The silence. Something inside Alex snapped. It wasn't the panic, the desperation, or the fear that dominated his thoughts. It was a quiet, growing realization that he could not allow himself to quit. He had done so much wrong, yes, but he was not going to give up without a fight. The old Alex, the one who was unsure, hesitant, and afraid of failure, would have walked away. But this wasn't the same man. For the first time in a long while, Alex felt something else: purpose. He knew that he had to take the final step, the one he had been avoiding for so long. He needed to believe in himself. Not just for Riverstone, not just for Chloe, but for him. It was no longer about avoiding failure. It was about proving to himself that he could stand tall, even when everything was stacked against him. Alex walked up to Chloe, his eyes focused, his voice steady. "We don't have time for fear anymore, Chloe. We've got one last chance and we're going to take it. We may not have all the answers, but we'll fight every inch of the way. I won't let you lose this company, not while I'm here." Chloe looked at him, her eyes searching his face as though looking for the truth behind his words. For a long moment there was only silence. The weight of the world hung between them. But Alex could feel something change in the air. Chloe's breath caught, and for the first time, Alex saw the faintest spark of hope flicker in her eyes. He could see it now. The belief that was slowly returning, even in the midst of all the chaos. She nodded, her voice steady as she spoke. "All right, Alex. Let's do it. Together." That was the moment that everything shifted. It was a decision. Oh, choice made in the face of fear and uncertainty. It was in the quiet, resolute moment of defiance against failure that Alex found his strength. And it was in that very moment, with the weight of the world still heavy on their shoulders, that the tides began to turn. Alex and Chloe dove into action, pouring every ounce of energy into finding a way to turn the situation around. There were no shortcuts, no easy paths ahead. Every phone call felt like a battle, every negotiation like a high-stakes game. But as Alex began to fight for Riverstone, something remarkable happened. His doubts, his fears, they began to fade. With each step forward, he discovered a deeper sense of resolve. The more he pushed forward, the more he realized that he had the power to change things. Chloe saw it too. There was something different about Alex now. His transformation wasn't just about his business acumen, it was about his heart, his willingness to go to any lengths to make things right. And that, more than anything, was what made Chloe trust him again. It wasn't just his work ethic, it was his spirit. The moment of suspense, where everything seemed lost, was the catalyst for Alex's growth. The inspiration he drew from within pushed him to act, to fight for the future he so desperately wanted to create. He no longer feared failure. He embraced it, knowing that the only way to succeed was to first face the risk of falling. In the end, Alex and Chloe were able to turn the situation around. The investor was convinced, the board was on board, and Riverstone started to recover. But more than just saving the company, Alex had saved something even more valuable, his belief in himself. As the dust settled, the chaos of the last few weeks began to feel like a distant memory. Riverstone was back on its feet, stronger than ever, and Alex stood at the heart of its success. What had once seemed impossible, a dream slipping through his fingers, had become a reality. But the true victory wasn't just in the success of the company. It was in the transformation that had taken place within Alex himself. The final hurdle had come. The board had agreed to a last-minute deal with the investors, and things were finally looking up. The tension had lifted, and the future, once clouded by uncertainty, now appeared bright. But there was still one moment left that would test Alex's resolve and character. Chloe, who had always been the visionary behind Riverstone, turned to Alex one last time with a soft, contemplative smile. "Alex," she said, her voice steady, "you've done more than just save the company. You've shown me what it means to truly believe in yourself and in others. I don't think you even realize what you've become." Alex looked at her, his expression a mixture of gratitude and humility. He had never asked for praise, never expected anything in return. But in this moment, the weight of her words sank deep into his heart. It wasn't just about business. It wasn't just about the victories or the struggles. It was about a journey that had taken him from a place of self-doubt and fear to one of confidence and strength, a journey that had shown him his true potential. But there was something else. The moment when he realized that, above all, this wasn't just about saving a company. It was about saving himself. He had grown, not just in skill, but in spirit. The success of Riverstone now symbolized the triumph of his inner transformation. The team gathered in the conference room to celebrate the success. Alex couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had led him to this moment. He thought back to the day he first met Chloe, the day everything had seemed to fall apart. At that time, he was just a guy trying to find his way, clinging to the idea of success without understanding what it truly meant. But the trials, the moments of failure, the times when he wanted to give up, those were the moments that had shaped him into the man he was today. It wasn't the accolades or the business achievements that mattered most now. It was the growth. He realized that, ultimately, the real success wasn't about making money or gaining recognition. It was about the person he had become. The self-doubt and fear were now replaced with a quiet confidence that came from knowing he had faced his greatest challenges and emerged stronger on the other side. Chloe, as always, had been his guiding force, believing in him when he didn't believe in himself. Yet Alex knew that while the road ahead was still uncertain, he now had the tools, the courage, and the strength to navigate it. There was no longer any need to fear the future. He had learned that the journey itself was where the real power lay. As they stood in the boardroom, surrounded by their colleagues, Chloe's words echoed in his mind. You've shown me what it means to truly believe in yourself and in others. Those words weren't just a compliment. They were a challenge to keep going, to keep growing, to keep believing. And Alex was ready to take on whatever came next. With Chloe by his side and Riverstone now a thriving, innovative company, the future was no longer a place of fear or uncertainty. It was a place of endless possibility. The chapter of struggle had ended. The chapter of redemption and triumph had begun. Alex knew that his journey was just beginning. The lessons learned through failure, sacrifice, and perseverance were now etched into his heart forever. It wasn't just about saving a business or a company. It was about creating something greater. It was about giving back. As he looked at Chloe, he knew they were about to embark on an even bigger journey together. Riverstone was no longer just a company. It was a platform for change, a vehicle for innovation, and a symbol of the power of believing in the impossible. The room was filled with laughter, smiles, and conversations about the future. Alex's heart swelled with pride, not just because of the financial successes or the recognition, but because of the relationships he had built, because of the trust and the love that had been nurtured along the way. Those were the true rewards. As the day came to a close, Alex stepped outside the building, the cool air brushing against his face. He looked up at the skyline, the place where, not too long ago, he had felt completely lost and uncertain. Now he saw it differently. For the first time he understood that the path wasn't about finding the destination. It was about the growth along the way. It was about the choices we make in the hardest moments, the sacrifices we endure, and the people we become in the process. Alex smiled to himself, a quiet peace filling his chest. He knew that life wasn't perfect. There would still be challenges, obstacles, and moments of doubt. But now, he knew the most important lesson. Hope and belief were the keys to any journey. And with those, there was nothing they couldn't achieve. The journey may have been long and difficult, but it had led to a place of hope, clarity, and a future full of endless possibilities. And for Alex, that was more than enough.